Hello and welcome everyone to this edition of the program People, Politics and Power. I am Imoni Amarere. There is so much to chew on, both at home and internationally, from the just concluded governorship election in Edo State to the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly opening in New York on Tuesday, which is expected to address ongoing global conflicts, global health crisis, climate change, poverty, and inequality. But on this edition, we shall focus our attention on some domestic issues. Now, most times, if not all the time, in Nigeria, public attention is focused on governance activities at the federal level. Very little or scant attention is paid to governance or lack of it in the states and local governments. Yet, so much in terms of resources and responsibilities are allocated and devolved to these levels of government that are regarded as the nearest to the people and from whom they derive their mandates. Even when some states enjoy a whole lot of media attention because of their locations, others are left to languish in the media backwaters and are only featured for less than savory reasons, such as insecurity and political propaganda. One such state is Sokoto in the far northwest, which has been in the news of late because of incidents of insecurity and controversies relating to a move to amend the Sokoto State Local Government Law 2009, allegedly to depose the revered Sultan of Sokoto. There have also been other controversies about contract awards for the drilling of boreholes, a 40-kilometer shelter bed, a 500 hectares forest enrichment program, and street perimeter fencing, allegedly running into several billions of naira. Now, traducers of the state government claim that the contracts were awarded without due process, a mark of arbitrariness, corruption, and lack of transparency. Now, Sokoto, alongside three other states, that is Enugu, Imo, and Kwara, conducted local government council elections over the weekend, just this weekend, to fulfill the constitutional requirement for governance at that level of government. But unlike some others, the Sokoto State governor did so just a little over a year after taking power. We shall be looking at these and the challenges of resource management and accountability as developmental issues seek greater attention. And I'm joined in the studio by Alhaji Sambo Bello Danchadi. He's the Commissioner for Information and Orientation of Sokoto State. Alhaji, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Good afternoon,
And also
Nigerians.
joining me is Mr. Louis Achi. Mr. Achi is a public affairs commentator and a journalist. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you for having me.
For joining me.
Thank you.
All right, let's go on a short break. When we return, we'll be diving straight into our discussion. Stay with us.
Nigeria of our dream. The Nigeria we need is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria, which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT.
Thank you so much for staying with us. People, politics, and power, and we are focusing on states, resource allocation, and, of course, transparency and accountability issues. Right. The Commissioner for Information, Sokoto State, is here with me, is my guest, and, of course, Mr. Louis Achi, who is a public affairs commentator and a journalist. Commissioner, let me begin this way.
Mr. Imoni.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's start with the just concluded local government elections in Sokoto State.
Well, first of all, let me tell you that autonomy of local governments is part of our governor's 9 points SMART agenda on which he ran his campaigns and upon which we were elected into office. So it is something that came and met us on the way. In fact, the governor had always, campaigned about local government economy and local government autonomy, and he was one time a staff of the local government. So he knows the workings, he knows the relevance of allocating resources to local governments to allow them to perform, because he has, on many occasions, shown that they connect between resource allocation to local governments and security. He has always been an advocate of giving local governments resources at their disposal, because that will enable them to chart programs and activities that will improve the lives of the people. One could recall that when the governor came on board, the tenure of local government councils was 2 years. And in the opinion of the governor, 2 years would be too brief for any local government chairman to be abreast of the needs of his people, draw up programs and activities that will improve the lives of the people. And therefore, in the wisdom of the Sokoto State government, there was an executive bill sent to the House of Assembly requesting the extension of the tenure of local government councils from 2 to 3 years, because previous administration limited their tenure to 2 years. And we found that that time is too small. And it's part of the governor's agenda to improve lives in the local governments by extending the tenure of local government council chairman to 3 years, so that all council chairmen will have ample time to draw up programs, understand the needs of their people, and execute those programs within that time frame.
Yeah,
now, local government election.
I know that move by the state government fits into another narrative.
Yes.
The narrative about an attempt or a move to dethrone the Sultan of Sokoto. We will come back to that shortly, but let me bring in Archie into this discussion. You are aware that just this weekend, 3 state governments, or 4 of them, had local government elections. In the case of Sokoto State, just over a year after taking office, the governor organized the elections. We know of states that have spent almost the entire 8 years of a governor in office that didn't conduct local government elections. In fact, in the case of Imo State, for instance, the elections this last weekend was coming up 7 years after the last one. So it means that the administration, even before the current administration in Imo State, did not conduct elections, local government elections. And same for so many other states and all of that. And I'm just looking at whether or not all of this is prompted by the July Supreme Court judgment, which made it mandatory for local government to be run by democratically elected structures.
Yeah, definitely there are clear linkages to that Supreme Court judgment. But first, let's establish that local governments are basic, that the grassroots level template in any democracy. That is where to develop a society or communities. That level of governance is important. And for so many years, they've been playing some kind of games, governors playing games, they are in charge, they call the shots almost totally. Because of that, at that level of governance is almost dead. But with the Supreme Court judgment, an important thing happened. He gave like a kick, and people woke up. Governors became aware that this game we've been playing has been nailed. There's a new dispensation now. So there's a linkage between that judgment and what is happening now. Last weekend, as you said, there were several elections at the local government level in about 4 states: Sokoto, Enugu, Imo, Kwara. And interestingly, the results INEC has put out tends to align with some level of reality, in the sense of, if contestants are popular, if the government in power is popular, somehow it rubs off on what comes out as a result. Though naturally in Nigeria, usually most results are contested. You know, people will say this and that. But if you're popular and you're delivering the goods, somehow it reflects on the results. And what we are seeing, though, in Enugu, the party in power, the others, PDP cleared in Kwara, APC cleared, possibly cleared the distance. In Imo, APC, the ruling cleared. In Sokoto, Sokoto is maybe a bit unique because PDP backed out. They backed out. What were their reasons? It's like they saw the handwriting on the wall that they won't make any impact. And this ties back to the previous administration.
Mr. Moni, can I just chip in here?
Okay.
Because he has said that the PDP opted out of the election. But it is important for us to realize, I could recall even a few weeks before the election, the governor pleaded with the PDP that they should not back out. Why we are saying so is this. Now, when the governor came into power, the State Electoral Commission, the entire body, was left intact. Okay. The chairman, the commissioners, even the messenger that was a staff of the State Independent Electoral Commission still remained, was retained by the APC.
That was appointed by the
PDP. So what moral right do you think the PDP would have to opt out of the election? That is something that beats everyone's imagination. But the fact is that the PDP is even afraid of its own shadows. Otherwise, they shouldn't have opted out of this election.
Was it the only party that opted out? Did other political parties
All the other political parties, they participated. Maybe, I think, maybe there may be 1 or 2 who joined the PDP and opted. But majority of the parties, maybe about 16 of them, participated in the election.
Okay, let's come back to the narrative about the attempt, or rather the move, the so-called move to...
So-called, I'm sure, I'm happy you have said so-called.
Yes,
go ahead.
The so-called move to remove the Sultan of Sokoto, which is closely tied to the legislation, the amendment of the Local Government Act.
Yes, but say, Money, something is interesting here. You should understand that there were 2 amendments to the law, Local Government 2009 election, Local Government 2009 Amendment Law. It contained both the appointment of district and village heads, as well as members of the Sultanate Council. The only amendment says that the Sultanate Council will nominate 3 candidates, out of which the governor would choose 1 and, appoint him. There was kind of a storm in a teacup by the PDP. There is so much noise, but in the end, the amendment was made. His eminence is still on his seat. All his other lieutenants are still on their seat. Has there been any attempt to move anybody out of his position?
What was
None.
the provision of the law before the amendment?
Well, the amendment is only that the Sultan will nominate 3, and that the governor will appoint. The issue is between who appoints. So I think the immediate past the law before amendment, it said that the Sultanate Council will appoint. But constitutionally, the power to appoint belongs to the governor. That is the constitutional requirement.
In other words, the law, prior to this time, was actually running counter to the
what the Constitution said. So the amendment is only intended to bring the law into conformity with the Constitution. And that was all. And it all came and passed, and there was any negative incident. And there may not be any at all.
Well, these narratives that touch on the Sultan, you know, in Nigeria, the way it's laid out, in a constitutional democracy, traditional rulers are excluded. Maybe in the First Republic, they had a role to play, but in the current constitutional run, they are excluded. There are lines they ought not to cross.
Okay.
Now, the Sultan, a retired Brigadier General in Nigeria, is quite a respected figure.
Very much.
But so many
respect and revere him.
Very senior traditional rulers, at times they attempted to cross those lines into politics. And it's risky, because we know, it's not a secret now, that the former governor of Sokoto State, Senator Tambuwal, had an eye on the presidency. And the story is flowing out that a lot of the gaps in governance Sokoto experienced had a relationship to the former governor's eye on the presidency. It drew a lot of his attention.
That is very true. That is very true.
We can't accuse the Sultan outright that he was pitching for that. You know, we don't want to accuse, we don't have that information. But what I'm saying generally is that traditional rulers now in Nigeria, there are lines they cross that they ought not to cross. And it sets up dissonance within the system. There are several examples of that. So Tambuwal and his gaps in governance and performance has a tie-up with his aspiration to be president, which have not worked out. I'm sure he was distracted in terms of governance focus. I don't know how much of support the Sultan gave him, but all these things have to bear in the amendments the current administration is making in the local government. People may interpret it that they are trying to clip the wings of Sultan, but it can't be established that does. But you can't move away from such insinuations.
Do you think, and this question is directed at the two of you, do you think that that narrative that came out at the time it did was fed in by perhaps the events that were happening in Kano at the time? And that there were apprehensions and fears that, oh, what happened in Kano could happen here?
Well, if there were fears, the fears actually were not well grounded, because there was nothing like that in Sokoto State. That I can tell you. And you have seen so far how we have been going, and there is continued mutual respect and cordiality between the government and the Sultanate Council.
Of course, the governor is, as I understand, is a very well-read man, a PhD holder.
Yes.
And should know what the law says.
So there's nothing, maybe what we need to talk about, like my friend said, is the former governor's obsession with the seat of the president. And I am sure it weighed heavily on the purse of Sokoto State. A lot of the state government's resources were diverted and used in that wild goose chase, which never materialized. Former Governor Aminu Waziri Tambuwal, I can tell you, honestly, I was so obsessed with the issue of, running for the presidency, and Sokoto State paid dearly for it. And that is the difference between himself and the present governor, because His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Sokoto State of today, that is His Excellency Dr. Ahmed Aliyu Sokoto, is well focused on the development of Sokoto State. And that is why the opposition PDP in Sokoto State are very uncomfortable. What he is doing in terms of development projects in Sokoto State is giving them sleepless nights. And I'm telling you, that is why, they are spinning out lies after lies, all of them not well-founded, all of them, come out in the end to be untrue. They are all intended to draw down the government of Dr. Ahmed Aliyu because they have seen that actually he is nailing their political coffin. All of them are eyeing the issue of 2027. And the specter of failure that is staring them in the face now is actually the thing that is paining them and giving them sleepless nights because they are seeing that the governor is waxing stronger and stronger. Initially, they were saying that he had concentrated development activities only in Sokoto State capital. But now that they are seeing projects springing up in the local government areas as well, that is why they feel that 2027 is saying bye-bye to them.
Well, it appears,
sure
actually, to come back to that question I asked before, that politicians are always trying to drag the traditional institution into their political phrase, one way or the other.
Yes.
And in some places, they may have succeeded. Yes. Or in some others, there may be some level of resistance. We have seen situation in Kano. We have seen situation very recently in Edo State and all of that.
If you look at the pattern, the common pattern has always been, whether it's a military administration, when they step in, they need stability. They go to the traditional rulers. They cut them, say nice things and all that. May they stabilize. It was about. Civilians, the same thing.
Push them aside?
The current administration, when they stepped in, they were reaching out, even promising, these people deserve constitutional roles. It's an old game. And strangely, these guys, the traditional, fall for this time after time, And then in the Kano incident, Kano is all tied to crossing certain lines. The affinity between the former Kano governor and the chairman of the
APC,
party,
national chairman.
It removed Sanusi from power and put his own. These are calculations. These are not secret anyway.
Ado.
Now, when the pendulum turned, the people in power just reversed it. Simple. And it's not a good thing for that jurisdiction because it creates the other governor broke up the emirate into how many? About 4 or 5. That's reducing the powers of this other new people came, changed it. You can see the amount of stress is setting up within even the people. So those things are not the best for progression. And in any society, they tend to diminish focus, and they could lead to other things if it's not handled well. And then the relationship now between the president and one of the parties there who is promoting one emir is also makes it at times you appear not to be able to read the unfolding events, but people can interpret it accurately. So the main thing I'm saying is that traditional rulers shouldn't cross certain lines. It's not in their own interest. Don't forget all the promise, all the sweet talk, the military people, the civilians come, will give you constitutional. How do you have constitutional rules in a constitutional democracy? You have a governor as a center of power. You have another center of power in the same jurisdiction. Is there something wrong with that?
All right, Elijah, let me look at some of the other controversies that have been thrown up in this. First, let's deal with the issue of security. The security situation in that part of the country is very dire. Very dire. From very true. Zamfara to Kebbi to Sokoto. In fact, the last one in Sokoto was so heartbreaking with the abduction of an emir and his eventual killing by his abductors, even after collecting or when there was a delay in the collection of ransom. What exactly is your government, the government of Sokoto State, doing with regards to security? Because Sokoto State borders the Niger Republic.
It does.
Which is said to be a source of some of these very deadly bandits and banditry that's coming into Nigeria?
First of all, we must thank God that things are getting better now, at least with the concerted efforts of both the state government and the federal government in the form of the military intervention that has already started yielding fruitful results. Some of these things will come out. We pray that in the next few weeks, perhaps these things will, if not completely eliminated, at least will be, highly minimized. But talking about what the state government is doing, or has done, and will continue doing, you see, in terms of collaboration with the security agencies, when the governor came on board, what he did was, meet with the security chiefs, listened to them, listened to the grievances of those on the ground, their officers and men who are doing the security issue. So he paid the backlog of allowances that they owed, and he also intervened in the provision of logistics. I could recall that he bought 140 vehicles. Some of them were buffalo, professionally meant for soldiers, and he gave them as assistance. He also gave vehicles to the police and other paramilitary organizations in the state. And again, the state government also bought motorcycles and gave as support to security agencies. Apart from that, the state government also recruited 200 able-bodied young men and got them trained, 200 from each local government, because we have identified about 13 local governments that from the Sokoto East Senatorial District and some bordering the senatorial zone, about 13 local governments. So 200 young men were selected
from each of the 200
of the 13 local governments. They were brought to Sokoto in Wamoko NYSC camp. They were trained by I think, a retired general of the Nigerian army. And they were deployed to the local governments. Recently, they were even given motorcycles and other working equipment so that they could help in assisting, because they are not security men themselves, but the intention is that they will provide backup and support and perhaps information.
Something in the mode of civilian support for the security forces.
The security forces. But they have their own uniform.
I'll
so that they could be identified. Yes.
What the governor has done, we can say, is commendable, but we don't have to continue playing the ostrich. Governor Ahmad Aliyu of Sokoto State doesn't command any army. He doesn't command any of the security agencies.
He doesn't.
Constitutionally, he doesn't.
Yes.
So all
but he's still called the chief security officer.
Yeah, he's still called all these buying motorcycles for. He's like playing ostrich. The fundamental issues can be escaped. We need to go back and tweak the constitution so that if you unchain these governors, empower them, it has to be a constitutional issue. It's not like buying motorcycles and giving training boys, but just pretending. To handle security at that level, state police is a major issue. I don't know why it's been taken as the issue. People dance around, people sing about and dance around. To unchain a governor properly, you need to empower him. And we have to go back to the constitution. It's not this issue of there are so many funny names they give them. They call them security.
These are constitutional issues that
they are, and they have to be addressed properly. And that will make your governor, put him in a stronger, not only your governor,
not only our governor,
the governors in that system in a stronger position.
Okay.
You can't have people infiltrate your jurisdiction. You're powerless.
The irony of it is that some states are opposed to state police, to the establishment of state police. You recall that just 2 weeks ago, there was the National Council of States that met and gave an ultimatum to some states to state clearly their position on
State police.
So ultimately, if you are going to amend the constitution, there must be a consensus, one way or the other, for that to move forward. But let me get back to...
There are a lot of issues. You know, talking about state police, you should know that Nigeria as a country itself, there are a lot of dangers in establishing state police in Nigeria of today. Because, you know, every state had better have, you know, a federal force ensuring security in that state. Because of our, you know, we have had experiences where people of different areas in the country, you know, suffer as a result of, you know, certain misunderstandings that sometimes crop up in this country.
The fear of political abuse of such...
Political abuse is another issue.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, let's leave that for now and go back to the Emma Ogobe, who was abducted and kidnapped. There were insinuations in the media, and I need you to clear this up, that the slowness of the state government in responding to the demands of his abductors may have resulted in his eventual killing. Did the abductors make any move to reach the state government? Or was it the family they were dealing with?
I want you to understand one thing. Issues like this are not actually discussed in this manner. I was not party to what happened. But at least what I know is that the state government participated, you know, in helping the situation. You know, nobody can tell you how the relationship is, or the linkage is done with these terrorists. I don't know, honestly. But I know that the government did whatever it could. But unfortunately, you know, what happened, happened.
Okay, there was also the report about the kidnapping of about 150 people in that same Gobe Emirate. That was also in the media, although eventually...
Was it really in the media or in the social media? Sometimes these things are not actually substantiated.
Yes. Was in the social media, not in the conventional media, but in the social media. Yes.
You see, it may not be true. I have not heard of it.
While on this issue of security, you know, His Excellency, the Governor of Sokoto State...
We must note that at least the military is now taking drastic measures. Okay. And these measures are producing results in collaboration with the state governments. And I'm happy to note that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we do hope that the way things are going in the very short, near future, we may have some pleasant stories to tell. This is our prayer.
Our ad is important because you're on the 9-point agenda of your governor,
Ahmed Ali.
Security is one of them.
Yes, indeed.
And a lot of all these things pivot on security. Without security, you can't achieve all those
developmental programs that you are applying.
All these things are listed.
Is very important. Yes. It's a good thing.
Yes.
The central government, which was also the ruling party in
is now intervening.
Is now intervening directly.
Very hard. And I think this is going to help everybody.
Okay. Let me come back to other controversies that have been very prominent in the media about borehole contracts, street fencing contracts, and all of that. In fact, in the case of the borehole contract, what was running in the media was that about 1.2 billion was going to be spent in renovation of boreholes. But I read somewhere that the Sokoto State government is saying, look, there was nothing like renovation.
Yes.
There were no boreholes to be renovated. What exactly is the true position?
The whole thing is a mischief. If you saw the video clip, you can understand that it was intended to, you know, create mischief. Because not even a whole sentence, only a few words were edited out of the governor's speech. Yes, indeed, His Excellency made a slip of tongue when he said renovation, or gyara in Hausa. The truth is that these are 25 newly constructed boreholes. And along with that, on this figure of 1.2 billion, it contained also an afforestation program and 400 kilometer square, fencing and tree planting. All this project is not only a Sokoto State project per se. It is a joint project between the Sokoto State government, the federal government of Nigeria, and the World Bank. And the contract were awarded by the World Bank. These are contracts issued not only in Sokoto State, but in the entire 19 northern states. And the procedure of giving the contract was done, in accordance with the international best practices of the World Bank. So nobody can, with this information available, can now, pin Sokoto State and say that we renovated 25 boreholes with 1.2 billion naira. That is far from the truth. This is an entire project. Our own the state government paid its own
contribution,
counterpart
funding. Yeah,
yes,
okay.
To make up the 1.2 billion naira. So this is.
So in effect, you're saying the PDP should go into a more creative mischief. You called it mischief.
No, it is a mischief.
Because with some knowledge of the lay of Sokoto State, the hydrogeology, the hydrography, and all those things, we assume they ought to know that such expenditure is not keying into what they are putting out. So that's mischief, as you said.
What they want is to create mischief and paint the image of Sokoto State government black.
Okay.
And what I'm telling you is because they have seen the handwriting on the wall. Okay. They have seen that the achievements being recorded by the governor in the past 1 year and a few months in office is equivalent to, more than equivalent to what they were able to achieve in their 8 years of governorship. So that should make them uncomfortable. And I'm not surprised at their response.
I'd like to ask this, Honorable Commissioner. Was there some measure of rancor in the handing over process that you think may have necessitated?
Was there a handover at all?
There was no handover?
I'm telling you that the PDP did not hand over in the formal way Sokoto State government. There was no written handover notes. The governor himself can tell you that not a single page of paper was given to him as handover notes. What they did was merely walk away and allow the governor to find his way.
So even on inauguration day,
he had to manufacture how he would take. Yeah?
Even on inauguration day, the former governor.
Even on inauguration day, none of them was there to hand over, even ceremonially. And there was no handing over notes.
And even at the ministry level?
Even at ministerial level, none. Because even in the Ministry of Information, there was no handing over notes. There was none.
And I've been tracking those developments because I was expecting a PDP counter to your narrative, but I've not been able to identify one that lends credibility to what you're...
If they can provide evidence that there was a handover note to the government of Sokoto State on takeover, they should come forward with it.
That, of course, Mr. Achi.
And the situation we took over Sokoto State was piteous, I can tell you, because things had degenerated so badly that, public water supply to the town, Sokoto City, had virtually ceased because the Kaduna Power Holding Company was owing the state government about $1 billion naira.
The state government was
remained
owing,
unpaid.
Was owing the Kaduna Power Holding
Yes.
Company. Yes.
Power was absent. There was no power even in the government house, even on handover day. When we came in, there was the government house was in darkness. And the new government had to find a way of, arranging with the power holding company, making some advance payment, so that power could be restored both to the government house and to the public water works.
Well, Mr. Commissioner, you used the word piteous. It was piteous when you took over. But you don't reflect that piteousness. You look like a prince. What's the secret?
Oh, well, you see, all praise due to God. Our governor did marvelously well.
Okay.
He has been able to stabilize the state.
Okay.
Salaries that were paid 10 days after the following month are now regularly paid on the 19th of every month.
Okay.
And I can tell you, up to this moment, Sokoto State government has not taken a kobo as loan from any financial institution. That is another credit to His Excellency, because we have not borrowed. We have been living within our means. And I can tell you, no contractor, the state government is not owing any contractor payment. Payments to contractors are being made as and when due. As you raise their certificates, you are paid, because the governor gives contracts according to resources available. We have been living within our means. I can tell you, even we, commissioners, had to spend a year before we could receive our vehicles. The government did not acquire vehicles for the executive council members until a year after office. This was in an effort to live within the means. Thanks to God, His Excellency is a financial expert. That is why he manages the resources very well. And another point we must not forget is that even our internally generated revenue, the IGR, has about doubled since this government came into power.
I was going to come to that.
Yes.
Two or three quick issues before we round off our discussion, which has to do with internally generated revenue and the management of such revenue. And I want to link that very closely, because I read somewhere that Sokoto State is perhaps the only state that has allocated in its budget for 2024 1/3 of its entire budget to education.
That is very true. And
where are you getting the money from?
Well, it all depends on how you manage what you are getting. The governor does not waste resources. He has no ambition to run for any office, but he wants to make a success of this one that the people of Sokoto State, by the grace of God, have so graciously given him the mandate to manage. So what we are doing is managing what we have fairly well and tapping all the resources that we could get for the benefit of the state. As I was telling you, the IGR, used to be 2 billion naira per month. Now we are generating 3.8 billion in a month. That's about double. So you can, and I believe with the backing that the Board of Internal Revenue is receiving from His Excellency, he has empowered them, he has given them facilities to work, he has also encouraged them to embark on technology-based, technology-derived collection of revenue. That is going to boost the intake of the revenue very drastically. And that is what
is that do you think that that would put a lot of tax burden on citizens?
Not really. We are being human about it, because you know that in a political setting, you must be very careful. If you push people too much, and it could also there could be a backlash politically. So, but all the same, all the tax areas that were hitherto neglected are now being brought into the net, and that is going to translate into, higher revenue for the state.
But I'm not aware of the 19 northern states. No governor or government has given priority to that amount of allocation to education. So what kind of passion is driving that for a governor? A third of this budget to education. None of the 19, I'm not aware anyway, if any of 19 northern states have done that.
Which is the question I wanted to ask.
Okay.
Resource management and human development. Where is the meeting point? Because here it appears to me that there's a lot more resources being devoted to education. Which is the human development aspect of it?
Well, if you weaponize resource management, you could properly plan. Say your governor is an accountant.
He is an accountant.
He could translate into positives in human development. Because part of the key problems you usually have here is we are careless or carefree with the way we allocate resource, and there's no discipline. Governments will say this and do that. If you allocate resource in a disciplined, transparent way, it could impact human development in measurable ways, basically. And it's possibly that's what His Excellency is doing.
That's one area that I think we need to also touch, which we may not have discussed. I'm sorry, you are driving the program, but I feel, the area of housing is very important, because the government of His Excellency, the governor of Sokoto State, has done wonderfully well in that area. We have constructed about over 1,000 housing units.
In 1 year?
In 1 year. I'll give you the breakdown. What happened is this. There are 500 housing units currently under construction by the governor, which, the foundation was laid by His Excellency, the Vice President, early last year. Also, there are 500 housing units initiated by the former governor, His Excellency Dr. Aliyu Mangataka Dawamoko, which had been abandoned by the immediate past administration. So the government also called back the contractor who had earlier abandoned the job, over payment dispute with the previous government. So an agreement was reached with the contractor to return to work. And he has returned to work, and very soon we expect that those 500 houses will also be ready. That makes 1,000. Apart from that, the state government also has purchased 136 housing units built by the Federal Housing Authority in Sokoto. These are houses built and completed by the Federal Housing Authority. And the government negotiated and purchased those houses and paid the Federal Housing Authority. I could remember the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, was in Sokoto to commission those houses. And when he went to Sokoto, what he said was, Mr. Governor, you are working, but you are not talking. So you should talk more. So this is actually why we need to let the world know. And we know our detractors are not comfortable with what we are achieving. But alhamdulillah, well, thank God we are trying just to do now.
Okay, Alhaji Bello Danjadi, just before we go, very quickly, I need you to comment on the whole controversy about street perimeter fencing, which they say is in the region of 30 billion.
Is that correct?
Is that correct?
Is that correct? That is far from the truth. You see, I could remember our response to that was that we even published what we shouldn't have published. That is the document showing the contract sum, which was amounted to 800 million plus.
That's transparency, at least.
But you know what they said again? They said, now, what about the procedure that the contract was given? Now, somebody who was talking about amount of 30 billion, now seeing that the figure is not correct, and this is the correct figure, now he has resorted to talking about the procedure of issuing the contract. I don't know whether the PDP wants to now apply for a contract. And if they so wish, they are free to apply. If we find them capable of doing the contract, we might consider.
All right. Well, let's leave it at that, gentlemen. Our time is fast spent. Alhaji Sambo Bello Danchadi is the Commissioner for Information and Orientation of Sokoto State. He's been joined by Mr. Louis Archie, who is a public affairs commentator and a journalist who is based here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Thank you so much for your time.
So much.
Thank you, Mr. Imoni.
Right.
My
Welcome.
pleasure. Thank you.
And that's our program for today. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.